Hello, happy Tuesday to all of you. I hope that you had a wonderful and blessed holiday on yesterday. Mine was wonderful. It was restful, it was pleasant, it was filled with coffee, wonderful music, and reading. That's the perfect thing for me. When we have 1 day holidays, I don't leave the house if possible. I take that opportunity to actually rest and enjoy myself. But anyway, I wanted to do this video because I have seen over the last, I don't know, few weeks, months, who knows. It's out there, it's repeated over and over and over. And I saw it last night on Twitter, this particular question. Um, for me, I find it to be a rather ignorant question. I don't want to call it dumb, but a rather ignorant question. And in some way, we are all ignorant to various things. You know, we're ignorant to, I say this all the time, we're ignorant to something. And so I find it to be a rather ignorant question. And that question is this: if Donald Trump is a racist, then why are Black people doing so well under his administration? Now, I find that to be both humorous and ignorant. Um, I'll say this as a person who did not vote for President Obama. I did not support him politically. I think as a human being, as a husband, as a father, he was a great example, um, especially considering um, the last president from his political party and considering the current president that we have. I think President Obama showed wonderful character as a husband, as a father. I think he's someone that we can be proud of. And I don't think we have to, um, as Americans, I don't think we have to hate people because we have differences of political belief. We can despise their political ideology, but still find something good in the human being when that is possible. So, that being said, um, when I look at the current president, I I don't like to use the term racist in reference to him. And I think we are throwing away or throwing that terminology. We are becoming very loose with various things that we use nowadays and things, how we engage in our differences. I'm not really comfortable with a lot of things that we're doing. I don't like the way that we were telling a lot of people, you said this in the past and you need to sit down, you need to step down from this and that. And I will do a video on that at another time because I think we are setting dangerous precedents, especially in the Black community. We should be very careful of how we are pretending to be this example of righteousness and strength when um, we have skeletons in our closet. It may not be towards white people; it could be towards other ethnic groups. So I think we have to be very careful, and I'm very careful in calling him a racist. Now, I don't tell people they cannot because that is your opinion and what you believe that word to mean is not exactly maybe what I come to the conclusion of that word. What I do think he is a very mentally disturbed individual who all of his life, one, has been able to scheme and to have his way as an adult. I think that's a problem. Two, I think he is an individual who did not receive the love and affection he needed as a child and grew up to become this very conniving, manipulative, selfish, self centered individual that as he's reached this age, unlike what the Bible says in 2 Corinthians or 2 Corinthians 13, that when a man becomes a man, when this male becomes a man, he puts away childish things. I don't think he's able to put away the childish behavior because he's never received the things he needed. And so now at this age of where he is, his narcissism, his sexism, his selfish behavior in using people is displaying in a way that allows him to come across as being racist. That's my personal belief, mixed with What I think, I really think the man is mentally deranged. That's my belief, and people get upset about that. But let's remember that President Ronald Reagan, we know now that he was in the early stages of dementia and Alzheimer's. He, being a person of better character, a person of better behavior, and being a man, a mature individual, he was able to disguise it and hide it better. And he had wonderful people working with him. His behavior, his personality, his character was different than our current leader. So I think that the mental illness was able to be disguised. We have a person now, you can't disguise it. And so I think that is what his problem is now. Other people may say he's a racist. But anyway, the point is, if he is, more so the point is, why are Black people doing so well under his administration? And that is what I find to be the ignorance. Now, I don't have a problem with white people being ignorant to this because their knowledge of history is limited. Because all of us who grew up in the United States, who studied any type of history in our classes, in our schools, if you went to public school, and I would imagine also I went to private school from the time I believe I was about 3 or 4 until I was 9. I went to all white or predominantly white institutions, private schools, and I don't recall ever seeing anything about uh, Black people. There were times I saw Native Americans when they talked about the Pilgrims and that being it. But the history that most white people are going to get is skewed. It's limited. So I expect them to be ignorant to certain things, to ask that question. Well, if Donald Trump is white, then how are Black people doing so well under him? Okay, but I am a little confused when Black people say it. And here's the reason. Because we as a people, a community, we have managed to do well under every single circumstance. When you look at slavery, the slaves, the slaves, these people, brilliant people who spoke multiple languages. Many of them spoke the native language of their land. They spoke the the language that was created by the slaves so that they could speak amongst themselves, just no matter what tribe they came from. They found a way to create this language that they could speak. And then they spoke the plantation English that satisfied the slave master. And then some of them learned to speak the queen or the king's English, so that when they escaped, they became these great orators. When they were freed from slavery, they became these great teachers and educators. So Black people were doing amazing things. But here's the thing, even in slavery, there were Black people who found a way to create financial wealth for themselves, even under the most oppressive conditions. They found a way to use their skills, whether it was working with metal, working with wood, whether it was being a midwife, whether it was being able to mix herbs in the field and make sure that the women and the men on the plantation, the slaves, were well cared for. They would send some female slaves who had learned how to use herbs and how to deliver babies. You know, the Black people were great in medicine. But we were later, after being freed, we were told, no, you can't do this. But there were times that slave masters would prefer that the slaves who were skilled at delivering would deliver the babies of their wives, because we were so gifted and we found a way to make money doing that. And we would save that money and buy our freedom from those who were willing to allow their slaves to buy freedom. Now, think about that. Under the most oppressive system here in this country, Blacks were able to find a way to thrive. many of them, not enough of them, but some of them found a way to thrive. The blacks in the North, even under the conditions that they were faced with, were able to raise money. We talk about abolitionists and we paint the picture of abolitionists as being white. It was the numbers of white abolitionists and the number of black abolitionists are not comparable. There were so many more black abolitionists that we don't even discuss them. But they were raising money. They were creating a way for black people to come to the North. They were finding a way to educate them. They were finding a way to give them employment. They were finding a way to help give them funds to get them to further up north and into Canada. That's under the most oppressive system. They found a way to create wealth. When we come out of slavery and we're in that small period of Reconstruction, blacks found a way to raise funds. They found a way to create their own jobs. That Reconstruction period only lasted a short time. We come into an era of terrorism against blacks and liberal whites who believed that black people had a right to be free, had a right to live and vote in this country like an American citizen. And they were being terrorized, whites and blacks, because they believed in the freedom of all American citizens. In those conditions, blacks were still finding a way to build wealth and to become stronger. And when we look at this period in the 1800s, the latter part of it, and we come into the 1900s in the era of Jim Crow, you can see under oppression, black people usually succeed. They would succeed. We have records of black towns, black cities from the South to the Northeast to the Midwest. There were a number of black cities, a number of black places where blacks were thriving. They had businesses, they had institutions, banking institutions, religious institutions. They had schools that they were teaching and nurturing the children, nurturing those who had come out of slavery, those who did not have an education, those who could not afford an education. They were nurturing them with education, giving them the understanding of skills, and we were thriving. So my point is, we have never thrived because of an administration. We have thrived because we made up in our minds to do better. So the question is, if Donald Trump is a racist, why are black people doing so much better under him? If you're saying that we're getting more black people jobs, if you're talking about the jobs of fast food industry coming rapidly into our communities, mobile network stores that are building up and putting up themselves in throughout the black community. We have all of these little cheap stores like Family Dollar and Dollar General, all of these places, these jobs that are popping up in the black community. If you're calling those jobs, those are not real jobs for grown people to do. More people in this country who are supposed to be thriving are having to work 2 and 3 jobs to maintain not even a decent living. Went to a restaurant the other day, and I could not believe how in the last year or two, the price on the menu had almost doubled. The living conditions in this country have not gotten better, they've become worse. We're paying more for our food, we're paying more for our clothing, we're paying more for our housing. We're not necessarily doing better. Yes, we're getting jobs, but we're having to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs in order to maintain healthy lives. And I'm not talking about black people, I'm talking about Americans, period. We're having to have multiple jobs to survive. Now, here is the answer. It has nothing to do with Trump. The increase of black wealth, I would say, as I'm watching and I think back, I could be wrong, but I would say it started with the housing bust. When that thing happened under President Bush, and people were losing homes. One of the things I noticed that Black people, young Black people started thinking like the ancestors. More Black people young Black people started going into real estate, and they started buying up these houses. They started going into once thriving Black communities and buying up houses, remodeling them, flipping them. They started going into development, property development, because they realized there was money. The younger generation started on this road to wealth and increasing the financial benefit within the Black community. That increase that you say, if Donald Trump is a racist, why are Black people doing so well? It did not start over the last 2 years. This we saw taking place during the Obama administration. I didn't vote for the man. I just gave you that premise in the beginning. I didn't vote for him. I didn't support his policies. I think in many ways he did not help the Black community. In many ways, that's my personal opinion. The point is, we start to see this rise of financial wealth coming into the Black community under his administration. I don't believe it had anything to do with either administration. What I believe it had to do with is that once again, the Black community realized we've messed ourselves up. During the civil rights movement, we were excited, we were elated that we had equal rights now. We could go and we could shop in Woolworths, we could shop in whatever the local grocery store was, where whites were only allowed and we were not allowed to go there. We could now go eat anywhere. We could buy our clothing anywhere. We could buy our furniture anywhere. We could now go to these places of service and receive supposedly equal service. But the truth is, we weren't getting equal service. We weren't getting equal lending opportunities. Our interest rates were and still are higher than everybody else's. But we were excited. And so we left our groceries, we left our services, we left our businesses behind in the urban community, and our community started to fall apart. And as we began to take on new jobs, we left our communities behind. So who's left in the community? Those individuals who needed the intelligence, who needed the business-minded people, who needed the businesses there, were left behind. The working people, we left them behind. But this generation, the millennials, the bottom of the Generation X and the millennials realized, wait a minute, our wealth is not necessarily in getting an education. Not that education is bad. I believe in it. But many of our younger people realize I'm not guaranteed a job if I go to university or college. So why not find a trade? Why not save my money and begin to invest? And so what we are seeing young Black people who are going back and remembering in some way something is speaking into their spirit and saying, look, you must become investors, you must become entrepreneurs. So Black people, young Black people realizing I don't have a guarantee to get a job that's going to be sustainable for me to have a sustainable life in this country. I have to create one. And so young people now have side hustles. They have 3 and 4 side hustles, and they're making and creating the wealth. They're creating employment for other Black people. That's why Black people are doing well, because we have a generation of people who have come to their senses and realize we made a mistake in leaving our businesses behind. Let's bring our businesses back to the community. We have food deserts, so we can create places for Black people to come and eat healthy food, because the Popeyes, the McDonald's, the Burger Kings, they're coming into our communities, but they're not necessarily giving anything back to our communities. We can come back into the community and we can create an environment of health and knowledge and understanding. And so we're creating and generating wealth within the community. It's not necessarily about administration. I have to ask myself sometimes, why am I afraid to invest in the Black banks? We don't invest in the Black banks. Who are going to loan money to these young Black entrepreneurs who have the brilliance to create the wealth that is not given to them? They have that tenacity that our slave grandmothers and great grandmothers, not grandmothers, but our slave ancestors had that mindset, that those who came out of slavery had the mindset to create wealth. This generation has that same mindset, that our wealth is not going to come from other people. It doesn't come from the man. It comes from us supporting one another. So why are Black people doing so well? Because Black people have come to understand that if we don't support each other, no one else is going to support us. So we are starting businesses and we're getting the word out and we're supporting one another, because we realize that if we put our money back into our community, then we can generate a wealth for our communities again, to be thriving, to be healthy, to be strong. And that wealth will continue to grow, and we recycle that wealth within the community. And we no longer have to look to the government for a handout. The welfare system has never been for us, and it has never worked for us, because we've never been that sort of a people. We've always been a people who says we will find a way to make wealth. It's in our DNA. And so we see the younger generation doing that. It is in the DNA that is who we are. We are seeing places of worship who are saying, guess what? It's our responsibility to not only preach and teach the word of God from a spiritual perspective, but we must also speak into the lives of our people wealth, and not just name it and claim it. God's going to do this. No, they're actually teaching people how to become entrepreneurs. They're teaching people how to maintain their wealth. There are congregations that are focused on that, because they understand and they know that in order to change the community that they serve and to build the facilities that they want to build, the wealth has to come from within. And so they are teaching their people how to be entrepreneurs. That's not coming from the government. That has nothing to do with a Republican or a Democrat. It has to do with the understanding of our community, that we must learn to generate that wealth. And so we have institutions, places of worship, that are bringing us back to that place of saying, it is the community. It is the community that generates the wealth. How did the civil rights movement fund itself? It did not get funding from Washington. The funding for the civil rights movement came from the Black community, because we had Black businesses. We had Black businesses. Who were the lawyers during the civil rights movement? Black lawyers. Because we had these institutions, we had these law firms. We trusted each other. We lost our trust in each other. And now this generation is saying we must learn to trust each other again, because we're the only one who can really support each other in the building of the wealth. And so I say congratulations to this generation that is coming up, where the Gen Xers, we were a little slow, a little hesitant. The millennials, the Black millennials, and some of the Gen Xers as well, are becoming these great entrepreneurs. But the millennials, I think, are inspiring the Generation X, and they are inspiring the baby boomers to generate wealth and bring it back into the community. Millennials, congratulations to you, because you have this mindset that our ancestors had, that the wealth is going to come from within our community, that we have to stop looking to the government for a handout. The welfare system is a great way to keep us in a beggarly element. But what happens when we start to realize it isn't the government, but it is us who generates the wealth? So when you ask the question, if Donald Trump is a racist, why are Black people doing so well? Black people are doing so well because Black people, once again, are doing what every other community has done. The Mexican American community, the other Hispanic American communities, the Asian American communities. We are once again realizing no one's going to build up our businesses if we don't do it. And we're bringing our dollars back into our communities. And when we need to go to the other communities, then we go to the other communities. But if we don't need to, why go? We can go to the restaurants in our own communities. We can go to the shops in our own communities. We can find our Black tailors to design our suits and our clothing. We can help support. And I am looking for the day when we have Black businesses that realize it's going to take time. You can't become the millionaires maybe overnight. Stop selling out to these corporate industries. They're sucking up our black entrepreneurs. We have to stop trying to go at it fast and start supporting each other and stop selling to make and generate the quick money. It's going to take time. Let's learn from our Hispanic people. They will start with one store and then it becomes multiple stores, but they will take the time and they will not sell to the corporate industries. They support one another. And with that mindset, the Black community does well. You all have a wonderful and a blessed rest of the day. Thank you. And hope, 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 hope. Anyway, enjoy your day.